أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وأفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي اللهم افتح علينا حكمتك وانشر علينا رحمتك يا ذا الجلال والإكرام اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا من فضلك علما وتعليما وقل ربي زدني علما ربي هب لي حكما وألحقني بالصالحين بعد. So inshallah we'll continue going through the third section of Imam Ghazali's Bidayat al-Hidayah. I apologize for not being able to make it last week. I had a family emergency, and so I was unable to attend. But inshallah, we'll still be able to finish the book before Ramadan. So my intention is to be able to go through the next couple of sections of this part today, and then we'll be able to finish it and conclude next week, inshallah, so that the month or the last Thursday before Ramadan, we'll have an opportunity to do the exam. And then we'll be finished the book bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. If for whatever reason we are unable to complete the text, before Ramadan, we'll finish on the 27th instead of doing the exam, and then we can do the exam thereafter, after Ramadan, just in case we're not able to get through the rest of the book by next week, inshallah. So the last time that we began this chapter, or this part of the book, we spoke about and we went through the etiquette with the al-Khaliq. This is the adab al-mu'asharata wal-suhba, or adab al-suhba wal-mu'asharata ma'a al-Khaliq wal-Khalq. So the etiquette of companionship with the Creator, that was what Imam al-Ghazali began with. And then we continued and we spoke about the adab with the scholar, and then the etiquette with the scholar, and then the etiquette with the student, and then the etiquette of the child with his parents. And that's where we concluded. So today we will begin with the acquaintances, the different levels or acquaintances that Imam al-Ghazali spoke about. So the last time we concluded with the statement of Imam al-Ghazali when he said, وَاعْلَمْ أَنَّ النَّاسِ بَعْدَ هَؤُلَاءِ فِي حَقِّكَ ثَلَاثَةُ أَقْسَامٍ. He said, know that people after the rest, those who are mentioned above, that after the categories above, the rest of the people who have relationships with you fall into three categories. The first is al-majahil, which is the first one he'll talk about. So he said, al-istiqa, wal-ma'arif, wal-majahil. So he talked about friends or brothers, and then acquaintances, the ma'arif, and then the majahil, those who you don't know, people that are not directly acquainted with you. And so the first section that he deals with is the majahil, the people who you do not know. And that is at this section right here. Bismillah. So it's a very short section, the paragraph. And he says, related to the people who you do not know. So first of all, who are the majahil? Who are the people that you don't? Those are other than the asdiqa and the ikhwa. Other than those who you would deem as acquaintances or brothers or ma'arif, these are just the general population. People that you don't have any sort of acquaintance with, the majahil. So what is the adab with the people that you don't know? So he begins by saying, فَإِن بُلِيتَ بِالْعَوَامِ الْمَجْهُولِينَ فَأَدَبُ مَجَالَسَةِ الْعَامَّةِ تَرْكَ الْخَوْضِ مَعَهُمْ فِي حَدِيثِهِمْ. So he begins by saying, when you are tested, فَإِن بُلِيتَ, if you're tested, because when you're being around people, it's a test, for better or for worse, for good or for bad. There's a test that is taking place. And there is a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ in which he indicated that the believer that mixes with people, and is patient and perseverant with the harm that comes from them is better than the believer that doesn't mix with people and is patient or perseverant with the harm that comes from them. And the idea behind that is just when you are around people, you will hear things, or you might experience things that are not don't make you feel comfortable or objectionable, right? People will say, jokes, or they'll say words or whatever that are of no benefit and sometimes are even of harm. If you're around people, for example, who happen to use foul language, right? That's a form of adha. That's a form of harm. And so the idea behind that is, this is some form of harm that is inadvertently coming to you, but you have to draw limits with people. And that's what this section is all about in terms of, well, what are the sort of the adab, which also include the limits that you adhere to and have with these people. And so he says, when you are tested with people you do not know of the general public, the etiquette of sitting with them entails 6 things. The first is avoid getting involved in their conversations or discussions. And so the idea here, تَرْكُ الْخَوْضِ مَعَهُمْ فِي حَدِيثِهِمْ, is so that you don't end up, wasting a lot of time, right? You don't want to end up losing benefit, because remember, at the beginning of the book and throughout, it's talking about how important your capital is in terms of your life and your time. And so the idea is, not to engage with people that you don't know, where you're listening in to their discussions and their conversations and things like that. There's no benefit in it whatsoever. So that's the first thing in that regard. But this doesn't mean, he says, al-khawdu ma'ahum. So tark al-khawdi ma'ahum, al-khawd meaning that there are these sort of deep engagements, these deeper discussions, or that you're spending a lot of time. That's what khawd has to do with. Whereas if you're doing it just a little bit so that you're able to attract them somehow, to some degree, because it's a form of da'wah. When you want to benefit other people, it's a form of da'wah when you have husnul khuluq with them, that you have good character with them and whatnot. So there are times where you'll be with them. You'll hear them, engage with them in conversations and things like that. But khawd means don't go too deep. Don't engage too much in that regard. But ba'd al-musharaka, a little bit of engagement with them is okay as a way to attract them, as a way to be able to have some benefit. Be that source of benefit towards others, but don't allow others to drag you into things that are of no benefit to you. So that's the first. The second is, he mentions, وَقِلَّةُ الْإِصْغَاءِ إِلَىٰ أَرَاجِيفِهِمْ. Avoid getting involved in their conversations or discussions. And then the second is not to pay too much attention to their disquieting talk. So the arajifihim, it's from in the Arabic word irjaf or rajafa, which has to do with that which is disquieting, that which is sort of obnoxious, or that which is something that causes a sense of turbulence within oneself. So there's this type of disquieting that that takes place from a lot of people that you don't know, right? And so that's what this second aspect or the element is adam al-isgha. Isgha has to do with listening attentively, right? Istima'. And so he's saying avoid or lessen the amount that you pay too much attention or that you listen to them attentively when it comes to in their conversations or discussions that are disquieting, right? The arajifihim. And so that's the second. The third is disregarding what follows on them from the bad things that they say. التغافل عما يجري من سوء ألفاظهم. Again, you're going to be around people, they might not have refined character, they'll say things, right, that are, of no benefit, and maybe, like I said, of even of harm and things like that. And so the idea is, just don't get into that. Don't give any regard to that whatsoever, but rather, disengage from that. The fourth is being wary of meeting with them too often or getting into a position where you are in need of them, right? So don't get too engaged with them where it becomes a point where there are certain aspects where you end up relying on them for certain things, okay? Draw your limits, keep your limits. Again, majahil, these are the people that you don't know. When it comes to the asdiqa and the ikhwa, that there's a different category here that Imam al-Ghazali goes into much more detail in. But this is just for the majahil, don't engage with them to the point where they become in a position where you rely on them for certain things, dunyawi or otherwise, in that regard. The fifth is then calling their attention to their blameworthy actions with gentleness and sincerity, when there is hope that they will accept what you say. So this idea here is if they're doing something that is inappropriate or whatnot, the idea is to call their attention to it. It's gently, right? Tanbih. It's not confronting. It's not, calling out and etc. There's a sense of invitation here, right? Because again, you don't know these people. You don't know how they'll respond. You don't know to what degree that they may accept or reject what it is that you're trying to do for them. So that's why it's like, okay, just be gentle. There's always a sense that when you're gentle with somebody, the chances of them accepting from you certain aspects or matters are going to be much higher than if a person uses other means, like the direct calling out, confronting, challenging, these types of things. If they're people that you know much better, right, and you know that that's what they need, or that's what, it's like your best friend and you've been acquainted with them for so many years, etc., and they need that shake, right, and you know that giving them that shake is what's going to be of benefit for them, right, then that's where you shake them up, so to speak, because again, it's for their benefit. Whereas for people you don't know, no, you don't use that, okay, because, and this is based also on the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, in which he said, "Inna Allah rafiq yuhibbur rifq." He said to Aisha that Allah is gentle and He loves gentleness. وَيُعْطِي عَلَى الرِّفْقِ مَا لَا يُعْطِي عَلَى الْعُنْفِ. And He gives with gentleness what is not obtained through severity or violence, nor what is obtained through any other means. وَلَا يُعْطِي عَلَى مَا سِوَاهُ. It's not given except through rifq or gentleness. So those are the five aspects, and I mentioned six, there are five, so that was a mistake on my part. So those are the five aspects in terms of when it comes to the majahil or the majhulin, those who you don't know. That's the adab or the etiquette with them in that regard. The commentators actually were saying the nusх is that calling attention to their blameworthy actions with gentleness is the fifth, and then having the sense of nusх is the sixth, that you advise them with sincerity when there's hope that they will accept what you say. So that's the sixth, and that's according to the commentator of the text. So that's how we look at the last two. It's not just the one, but it's actually a two. So just for purposes of clarification. Are there any questions about that before we move to the next section? All right. So the next section now deals with al-ikhwa wal-asdiqa, the brothers and friends. Now, what's the difference between al-ikhwa or asdiqa? What is meant by ikhwa is asdiqa. Okay? What is meant by brothers is friends. Because you can have brothers that are not necessarily your friends. So here it's basically telling you that the brothers who are your friends, right? Because you can have brothers that aren't necessarily your friends, so to speak. And so there was once it was asked, who is more beloved to you or is better towards you? Akhuka am sadiquka? Who's better to you, your brother, akhuka, or your friend, sadiquka? And he said the response, فَقَالَ أَخِي إِذَا كَانَ صَدِيقي. My brother, if he was my friend, or when he is my friend. right? So that this is the type of relationship that we're talking about. And so this is the second category. The first being the majhulin, those who you don't know. The second category are the brothers who are your friends, okay, or sisters, when it comes to our sisters. Whenever we talk about brothers or ukhuwa, brotherhood, it includes sisterhood. So just like when we speak about man in the form of the human being, as the al-insan, right, which includes both the male and the female. So it's not intended to, single out, for example, men over women or something of that sort. No, I mean, it's just the default is that includes both men and women. And so ikhwa here includes both brothers and sisters, male and female. All right. So Imam al-Ghazali, he says that as for al-ikhwa wal-asdiqa, when it comes to the brothers and friends, the brothers who are your friends, فَعَلَيْكَ فِيهِمْ وَظِيفَتان. You have two affairs or two matters that you need to do with them. Before entering into such a relationship, you must do two things. All right, the first duty, al-awwal, is to check for the presence of the requisite qualities of companionship and friendship. For you should not take as a brother, as a companion, one who is not fit for brotherhood or companionship. All right? And this is based on a hadith of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which is a sahih hadith. Al-mar'u ala dini khalilih, falyanzuru ahadukum man yukhalil. That a person, their religious life, it's only as good as that of their friends. And literally in the Arabic, it says that a person is on the deen of their khalil. Their khalil is that deep, intimate friend, right? Ibrahim alayhi salam was known as Khalilullah. He was the intimate friend of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so the Prophet ﷺ is indicating that a person is on the deen of their deep, intimate friend, of their khalil. So look carefully, look closely to who you take as that deep, close, intimate friend. Right? Consider well who you befriend. And this is Imam al-Tirmidhi, he relates this hadith. So Imam al-Ghazali, he says that there are 5 qualities. This is where the 5 comes in. There are 5 qualities that a person should look for in this companion, right? This akh, this brother who is your companion. If you seek a companion to be your partner in learning and your friend in the matters of your deen or the religious life and your dunya, your worldly life, then you look for 5 qualities in them. The first, al-awwal, al-aql, intellect. All right? Now what is meant by aql, this is not talking about the natural capabilities that people have. Because sometimes there might be some people who are more intelligent than others based on the capacities or capabilities that Allah has given to them. That's not what's being referred to here. What's referred to here in terms of the intellect is based on al-muktasab. Iktisab has to do with what a person can acquire based on their actions, based on their efforts, right? And so that's what it's being referred to here. It's not being referred to the intelligent individual who is naturally a genius or has a high level of capacity from an intellectual perspective. That's not what is being talked about here. The aqil is the one that is based on doing the right things, right? So when the Prophet ﷺ described al-kayyis is the one who uses their intellect and is wise and is astute. Who is al-kayyis? Man dana nafsahu, the one who takes themselves to account, wa amila lima ba'd al-maut, and then does actions, does things that will help them after they die, right? To what is to come after death. So that is not something that is based on a person's intellectual capacity, right? In terms of they do an IQ test and, oh, I have to befriend people who have score above a 130 or a 140 on an IQ test. No, it's not talking about that. It's talking about that which a person can acquire. Because the opposite of that are those who waste their time. The ahmaq is the one who basically just follows their desires, does whatever their nafs tells them to do, and it's a free-for-all. Okay, that's somebody who is not intelligent, because they're not preparing themselves for what is to come after death. Okay, so that's what's being referred to here. Don't misunderstand this as that in terms of, oh, I have to be friends with the geniuses, so to speak, and those who have a high level of intellect in that regard. No, a simple person who does not necessarily have a high level of education, like a PhD or whatever, they can be intelligent in terms of, I know what I need to do to help me in my deen and to help me gain success and felicity and salvation in the hereafter. That's aqil. That's somebody who is using their intellect, al-aqil, okay? And that's what Imam al-Ghazali is referring to here. So he says that there is no good friendship with a foolish person, for such friendship will only end in estrangement and breaking off relations. This person may even harm you while intending to bring you benefit. For an intelligent enemy is sometimes better than a foolish friend. Al-adu al-aqil khayrun min as-sadiq al-ahmaq. And then he quotes some lines of poetry that is from Ali ibn Abi Talib, radiallahu ta'ala anhu, wa karamallahu wajhah. And so these lines of poetry, they say in Arabic, وَلَا تَصْحَبْ أَخَاكَ الْجَهْلِ وَإِيَّاكَ وَإِيَّاهُ فَكَمْ مِنْ جَاهِلٍ أَرْدَى حَلِيمًا حِينَ وَاخَاهُ يُقَاسُ الْمَرْءُ بِالْمَرْءِ إِذَا مَا هُوَ مَا شَاهُ وَلِلشَّيْءِ مِنَ الشَّيْءِ مَقَايِيسٌ وَأَشْبَاهُ وَلِلْقَلْبِ عَلَى الْقَلْبِ دَلِيلٌ حِينَ يَلْقَاهُ. So he said, do not befriend an ignorant person, let both you and him beware. For how many an ignoramus has brought to ruin a gentle forbearing man when he befriended him. A person is measured by the company he keeps, like one pair of shoes placed next to another. Everything is evaluated by comparison to its peer. A heart will reflect the reality of the heart it keeps company with. So this is something that, again, it's based on actions. It's based on what is it that people do, right? Not based on their natural sort of capacities or whatnot, right? So that's the first. The second is having a sense of husn al-khuluq. This is so key, right? That to have good character, being with people who have good character. And this is something that, again, there's so many different hadiths that talk about jalisul salih wa jalisul su, the difference between the righteous companion and the evil companion, jalisul su, which is the one who ends up causing you harm based on what they do. Okay, that's the criterion. So he says, rahimahullah, do not be friends with a person of bad character. That is somebody who cannot restrain his anger or control his desire. So here he's giving you a more specific definition of what it means to have husn al-khuluq, right? Is the one who is able to control themselves. وَهُوَ الَّذِي لَا يَمْلِكُ نَفْسَهُ عِنْدَ الْغَضَبِ وَالشَّهْوَةِ. That's the person who has bad character, right? The one who has su' al-khuluq. They can't control their anger, meaning their actions, when they get angry, nor can they control their desires, again, related to their actions. Because if a person has no control over their desires, they will do things that is based on their hawa, right? And so everything is sort of centered around actions, right? Good character are those people who do good actions. Bad character are those people who do bad actions. So it's not about the anger or the emotion in and of itself, but it's what emanates from an individual when they're in that state, when they're in the emotional states of anger, or that they want to follow their desires, and so then they do things in following their desires. There is a narrator of hadith, his name is Alqama al-Utaradi. So he is a 3rd century Hijri scholar who was well known in terms of his character, having good character, and he was a thiqa. He was a trustworthy narrator of hadith that many of the scholars, the famous scholars of hadith, narrated from, including Ibn Hibban and others. And so he gave a piece of advice to his son. And so he said, Alqama al-Utaradi, may Allah have mercy on him, he summarized the traits of good character in the counsel he gave to his son when he was near to death. So when Alqama al-Utaradi was on his deathbed, he gave these pieces of advice to his son. Very good piece of advice. He said, "O my son, if you wish to befriend someone, take as your friend a person who, if you serve him, he protects and preserves you. If you spend time with him, he beautifies you by his company. If you are in financial need, he provides for you. Take as your friend one who, if you extend your hand towards something good, assists you in it. And if he sees you doing something good, appreciates and remembers it. But if he sees you doing something bad, he stops you from doing it. Take as your friend one who, when you say something, believes you. When you attempt something, accepts your leadership. And if you should dispute about something, prefers you to himself, so long as you're on the truth, right? It's not about the self." So it's a very beautiful, summarized piece of advice in terms of who a person should take as a friend. And then he quotes another few lines of poetry from Ali ibn Abi Talib radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. إِنَّ أَخَاكَ الْحَقَّ مَنْ كَانَ مَعَكَ وَمَنْ يَضُرُّ نَفْسَهُ لِيَنْفَعَكَ وَمَنْ إِذَا رَيْبُ الزَّمَانِ صَدَّعَكَ شَتَّتَ فِيهِ شَمْلَهُ لِيَجْمَعَكَ. So he said, "Verily your true brother is the one who is he who is really with you," right? That he's with you in truth and is sincere in them being with you. "Who will harm yourself in order to benefit you," right? In other words, this idea of harming oneself is, when a person does something based on the preference of the other than oneself in order to benefit the other, right? That this might bring some form of harm to the individual. وَيُؤْثِرُونَ عَلَىٰ أَنفُسِهِمْ وَلَوْ كَانَ بِهِمْ خَصَاصَةٌ. As Allah describes in the Quran, those who they prefer others over themselves, even though they might be in need. And that might be a form of harm, where it's like, okay, I need something, but I'm not going to tell my other, the person that's in front of me that I actually need this, but I'll give it to them. And that might bring about some level of discomfort or even a minor form of harm, but I won't mention that because I want to benefit them. And that's what is being mentioned here as who your true brother is, right? And then when in the troubles of the time break you, they'll shatter themselves. He will shatter himself to pieces in order to gather you together, right? So it's like, beautiful lines of poetry that define, a true friend, right? A true Sadiq. So that's the second, having good character. The third is uprightness, right? So the one who is salah, they are salih. So he said, "Do not befriend a wrongdoer, fasiq." So the opposite of a salah or a salih is a fasiq. The opposite of a righteous or upright person is a corrupt person. Do not befriend a corrupt person, a wrongdoer, who persists in committing a major transgression. Again, what's the definition? Based on actions, right? The one who consists and persists in committing major transgressions. Because somebody who fears Allah would not persist in committing major transgressions, right? That they would not continue doing kaba'ir or enormities, And even those who continue or persist in doing minor sins, right? I mean, the scholars, they'll say, "La saghiratin fil israr or istimrar," right? That there's no saghira, there's no such thing as a minor sin. If a person is persistent, they continue doing it, right? And they're insisting that, it's only a minor sin, no big deal, right? They say, "La saghiratun fi israr or istimrar." There's no small sin if a person is persistent and insists on doing it. وَلَا كَبِيرَةٍ فِي الْإِسْتِغْفَارِ وَلَا كَبِيرَةٍ فِي الْإِسْتِغْفَارِ. And there's no major sin with istighfar, that Allah forgives all sins, major and minor. So here, Imam al-Ghazali is saying that as for somebody who does not fear Allah Most High, you cannot be safe from his danger. Indeed, such a person changes as his objectives change. So this idea of a person who changes as their objective changes is somebody who doesn't have any principle, right? This is somebody who, sort of goes with the flow, but they don't have any sort of principle. They don't have anything to stand on, right? It just, they do whatever they feel is of benefit, or will give about some temporary good or something of that sort. But they're not principled, right? And so that's the one who basically changes as his objectives change, because they don't have any principles really to stand on. Allah Almighty said to His Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and this is from Surah Al-Kahf in the Quran, وَلَا تُطِعْ مَنْ أَغْفَلْنَا قَلْبَهُ عَنْ ذِكْرِنَا وَاتَّبَعَ هَوَاهُ وَكَانَ أَمْرُهُ فُرُطًا. Do not obey someone whose heart we have made heedless of our remembrance, who follows his desires or inclinations, and whose case has gone beyond all bounds. وَكَانَ أَمْرُهُ فُرُطًا. So that they've gone to extremes, right? That they've transgressed all these different bounds. And so this is something that is important, not to be with those people. Don't obey them, not to follow them, right? And the part of the verse that comes before it, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is encouraging the Prophet, وَاصْبِرْ نَفْسَكَ مَعَ الَّذِينَ يَدْعُونَ رَبَّهُمْ خَوْفًا وَطَمَعًا يُرِيدُونَ وَجْهَهُ. That be with those who be patient and perseverant, with those who continuously turn to Allah, make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? In fear and in hope. يَدْعُونَ رَبَّهُمْ خَوْفًا وَطَمَعًا. Right? That they, in fear and in hope, يُرِيدُونَ وَجْهَهُ. And that they're seeking the countenance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then the completion of the verse. Do not obey. وَلَا تُطِعْ مَنْ أَغْفَلْنَا نَفْسَهُ. Or وَلَا تُطِعْ مَنْ أَغْفَلْنَا قَلْبَهُ عَنْ ذِكْرِنَا وَاتَّبَعَ هَوَاهُ وَكَانَ أَمْرُهُ فُرُطًا. So you must be wary of friendship with a wrongdoer, for witnessing wrongdoers and their transgressions on a regular basis will remove from your heart all sense of their enormity and make them seem insignificant. That's the danger, right? If you're with people who are constantly doing kaba'ir, right? Somebody who is always talking about, doing things and bragging about their misdeeds, which are considered as kaba'irs, whether it's stealing or whether it's, illicit relationships or whatever it is, the effect or the impact that has on the individual that is listening to that is like, oh, well, it's not a big deal. So what, right? I mean, they've been doing it for so long. They seem like they're okay. They seem fine. And so then the danger, what happens is that a person then feels that these things are not a big deal. They're not an enormity, right? And this applies so much so, as we've mentioned so many times before. It applies so much so with what we say, all right? If we are around people who are not careful, because remember, a lot of the kaba'ir, a lot of the enormities that people do are based on what they say, their tongues, the statements that they make. And so then it becomes regular, that they do it over and over and over again, and it's not a big deal, right? And that goes back to that hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, that the servant, or a person will say that which is displeasing to Allah, and they don't give it much consideration. لا يلقي لها بالا إنما العبد لا يتكلم بالكلمة من سخط الله. That a person might say something that is displeasing to Allah. لا يلقي لها بالا. Doesn't give it much consideration. Doesn't think it's a big deal, right? يهوي بها إلى جهنم 70 خريفا. That it drags them down into the fire 70 seasons, right? I mean, or 70 degrees. So it's something that, again, if you're around people who they don't treat this as an issue, they don't treat this as something major, it'll rub off onto you, and you'll think that, okay, it's not a big deal, right? They're doing it so often, and so what? And that becomes then dangerous, because then you start doing the same thing. And that's the travesty and the harm that comes from being with people that are, have su' al-khuluq, and that they are jalis su' and that they're not upright, they're corrupt, right? This is, again, I have to say this over and over again, it is not about judging people. You don't judge people. But it's rather based on the actions, that if they're going to cause you harm, by being around them, then you withdraw, you disengage, all right? It's about the actions and understanding the harm that is caused by actions rather than judging people in and of themselves. No, right? That's not what we're talking about here. So Imam al-Ghazali goes on to say, this is why the crime of backbiting has become acceptable to people's hearts. So there's the example that he gives, again, related to the tongue. The crime of backbiting has become acceptable to people's hearts and is taken lightly. If people were to see a gold ring or a silk garment being worn by a religious jurist, they would strongly disapprove of it. Yet backbiting is a much more serious offense than that. Right? So in other words, if the same people here who are backbiting, if they were to see like a religious scholar who's wearing a gold ring, which men aren't allowed to wear, or wearing a silk garment, which is prohibited for men, and then they say, oh, look, that so-and-so, he's a faqih, or he's a scholar, he's a jurist, and he's doing this, and then yet they're backbiting. And it's like, that's much worse, by the way, right? Backbiting is way worse than a male wearing gold or silk. Backbiting is way worse, right? And so this is what the point is that Imam al-Ghazali is trying to make here. All right, that's the third. The fourth is al-hirs, which actually refers to the one who does not have an attachment to the dunya, right? And so there's a sense of absence of greed, right? And so this idea of absence of greed, a person can be tamma', that they have tama', that they have this sense of, greediness, of always wanting more and more things that are dunyawi. And so in another manuscript or another of the Arabic text, الرابع أن لا يكون حريصا على الدنيا, that a person should not have this sense of hirs, or holding strongly onto the dunya. So this is what Imam al-Ghazali is saying in this section. Do not befriend a person who is greedy for the ephemeral world. فَلَا تَصْحَبْ حَرِيصًا عَلَى الدُّنْيَا. Right? Avoid it. That's somebody who is just greedy for the dunya. Friendship with somebody who is greedy for this world is a lethal poison. Sammun qatil. That's how he describes it in Arabic. Very strong words. Sammun qatil. It's a poison that is lethal. It will kill you. All right? It will kill you. Spiritually speaking, it will kill you. And so he's saying that for human nature is designed to imitate and follow by example. And so if you find somebody who is always constantly, everything about them is the dunya. It's all about the bling. It's all about, the nice clothes and the fancy car and the big house. And that's all they're concerned about, right? It's all about dunyawi materials. This is going to cause you harm, and it will eventually kill your heart. Okay, on a spiritual level, it will kill you. Because you'll then be inclined towards it. You'll be like, hey, that looks kind of nice. They seem to be enjoying themselves, right? And the idea is, well, I'll be able to enjoy myself with some nice dunya, and right, and whatnot. So you'll end up following them to some degree, even if it's by inclination of the heart. Okay, even if it's by inclination of the heart that you'll desire it, right? And that can cause harm. So he said, indeed, one person's nature may take from another without even realizing it, right? Like this is something that people might not realize. You're hanging around somebody, they're having this effect or impact on you, and you don't actually realize that it's having that impact on you. Little by little, bit by bit. So he said, so keeping company with one who is fervently attached to this world increases your own greed for it, while being with someone who has renounced this world will encourage your own renunciation of it. Right? If you're around people who they don't have the dunya, right, that in their eyes or in their hearts, right? And when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was saying in the Quran to the Prophet, right, in the same verse in Surah al-Kahf, where he's saying that don't incline towards them, that then your eyes sort of deviate, right, because you have some desire for the dunya, right? So subhanallah. The verse, I'm trying to remember the verse, it's in Surah Al-Kahf. Remind me of it. It's the same verse that it says, واصبر نفسك مع الذين يدعون ربهم بالغداة والعشي يريدون وجهه ولا تعد عيناك عنهم تريد زينة الحياة الدنيا. Right? And then it says ولا تطع من أغفلنا قلبه عن ذكرنا. Right? واتبع هواه. So that that aspect of don't allow your eye to be to deviate, right? ولا تعد عيناك عنهم تريد زينة الحياة الدنيا. Like, don't let your eyes swerve from those people who you are being encouraged to be with. Those who make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Those who have that sense of fear. Don't let your eyes swerve away or deviate from them in desire of the dunya. Right? ولا تعد عيناك عنهم تريد زينة الحياة الدنيا. So that is something that is imperative. Be with the people of zuhud. Be with the people who will renounce the dunya, and that will affect you. That will rub off onto you in that regard. All right, that's number 4. Al-Khamis, as-sidq. All right, this is so important. The 5th is having being with those who are honest. They have a sense of truthfulness, right? It's all about, being with the people. Well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا اتَّقُوا اللَّهَ وَكُونُوا مَعَ الصَّادِقِينَ. O people who, or you who believe, have taqwa of Allah and be with the people of sidq. وَكُونُوا مَعَ الصَّادِقِينَ. Be with the people of truthfulness. Right? It's a command from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Imam al-Ghazali, he says, do not befriend a liar. فَلَا تَصْحَبْ كَذَّابًا. Now, a kadhab, be aware in terms of the Arabic meaning here, the language here. Somebody who lies is not necessarily a liar. What do we mean by that? Right? The hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, where he said that a person continues to lie until they become written with Allah as a liar. So if somebody says something that isn't true, in the Arabic language, if I say كذب فلان, that so-and-so, he said a statement that is not in accordance with reality. That's what kadhaba means in the Arabic language. Kadhaba fulan, meaning that he said something that is simply not true, right? Intentionally, not intentionally, knowingly, not unknowingly, that doesn't come into the equation at this point in time. I'm just saying that, kadhaba fulan, they said something that is simply not true. All right. If they continue doing that, and they know that they're doing that, then it becomes a morally objectionable matter, where then they're considered as a liar, kazzaba, right? Where it's like, okay, this is a habit, they know what they're doing, they're constantly doing this is a problem, right? So we differentiate. A kazzab, there's an emphatic there. It means that a liar, somebody who they do this constantly and on purpose, knowingly what they're doing, all right? But somebody who lies where they might have made a mistake, it's a lie in the sense of it's not true, it's not based on reality, right? That is not what is being talked about here. This is somebody who constantly is doing this, and that they are a kadhab, they are a kadhaba, they are a liar. So Imam al-Ghazali is saying, do not befriend a liar, for you will always face deception from him. He is like a mirage, that he makes what is far seem near to you and what is near seem far, right? And so it's that similitude that he uses in terms of the mirage, just as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the Quran, يَحْسَبُهُ الظَّمْآنُ مَاءً حَتَّى إِذَا جَاءَهُ لَمْ يَجِدْهُ شَيْئًا. That, a person who is thirsty, they think that is there is water, but when they get to it, it's nothing. They realize that it's nothing. The same effect happens with somebody who is not honest, somebody who is constantly dishonest or is a liar, that they will beguile you, they will deceive you, they will fool you, right? So be with the people who are sadiqeen. This is that they have a sense of truthfulness and sidq, right? So those are the 5 characteristics or qualities that a person looks for in the friend, right? So the first being intellect, the second husn al-khuluq, good character, the third is salah, uprightness or righteousness, The fourth is عدم الحرص على الدنيا, right? That they don't have greed for the dunya. And then the fifth is that they have a sense of sidq or honesty, right? So he goes on to say that you might not find all of these qualities existing together in those who are resident in the religious colleges, right? So he's alluding here to those who, okay, they're studying the deen, they're always in places of trying to improve themselves and studying the deen. And he's saying you might not find all these qualities existing together even in those people who are resident in the religious colleges, at fil madaris, or in the majalis, in the gatherings of spiritual gatherings, or fil masajid, or in the masajid, in the mosques, right? So he said, at this point, you have one of two choices. Either opt for isolation and solitude, in which you will find peace and safety, or keep your interaction with your friends proportionate to the level of these qualities with them, all right? I would say that in the second one is something that would be more applicable in our time. We need to have some level of companionship. We need to have some positive influence around us, okay? When you come to the wellness, when you go to the masajid and you interact with people and you help one another and you encourage one another to come here and things like that, we need that. Wallahi, this is something that we honestly need. It's only when you don't have any of that around you that you opt for isolation and solitude, in the sense that this is to save yourself from the destruction, is to save your deen. At that point, then you isolate yourself. But so long as there are people who are around you that have these qualities, right, in terms of honesty and uprightness and good character and intellect, and they're not after the dunya, then be with them, right? And as proportionate as it is, as soon as you see that, okay, they're going in a different direction and it's not benefiting and it's causing harm towards me, then it's proportionate, meaning that, okay, I'm going to disengage with such individuals because I find that it's actually causing and affecting my deen in a negative way, right? And so that's something that for you yourself, this is our criterion for who it is that we decide to befriend or to limit our interactions with. It's based on these aspects, right? Again, not about judging people, but it's based on what is of benefit for my deen. Because if I lose my deen, I've lost everything. If I lose my iman, I've lost everything, okay? And so I don't want to continue those relationships that are going to have that level of harm upon me. So then he says, this is accomplished by realizing that brethren are of three types. Okay, so now there's a tendency to be able to sort of put people or individuals into categories. Again, not to judge them, but to be able to understand, okay, these are the types of people that you will run into or become in contact with. So the first one is a brother for the sake of your hereafter. Akhun li akhiratika, right? The person who is your brother or your friend for the sake of your akhirah. Seek from him only support in religious practices. So he says, وَذَلِكَ بِأَن تَعْلَمْ أَنَّ or he says, فَلَا تُرَاعِ فِيهِ إِلَّا الدِّينَ, right? That's what you're seeking from him. Things that are related to the deen, right? That those who you are befriending for the sake of your akhirah. All right, that's the first. Then the second, وَأَخٌ لِدُنْيَاكَ, then a person, a brother or a friend that is for the sake of your dunya. Seek from him nothing beyond good character, right? فَلَا تُرَاعِ فِيهِ إِلَّا الْخُلُقُ الْحَسَنِ. That's the only thing that you seek for a person that is your brother in terms of for dunyawi, is just good character, right? And then the third, وَأَخٌ لِتَسْتَأْنِسَ بِهِ, or somebody who they simply have agreeable company. A brother who is simply agreeable company. Seek from him nothing beyond being safe from his wickedness and evil, right? So this is the one who, that, if you're in them because of good company, then limit your interactions with them so that you don't end up being caused harm from their wickedness or evil, right? That you're, and the Prophet ﷺ defined at the very base level, who is the Muslim, al-Muslimu man salima an-nas min lisanihi wa yadihi. So the Muslim is the one who other people are safe from their tongue and their hand. So be that person who other people are safe from the tongue and from the hand, right? In that respect. And so then he goes on to say, وَالنَّاسُ ثَلَاث, people are of three kinds. The first group is like nourishment, غَذَاء, لَا يَسْتَغْنَى عَنْهُ, that I can't do without it. Some people, there's like, that there's so much benefit, or that it's like nourishment. You don't want to do away with them. You cannot exist without it, right? And those are the best of people. The second group of people is like dawa, medicine. So medicine is only taken when needed, right? In certain amounts from time to time. The second is like medicine, one needs it from time to time, right? It's not like you're taking medicine all the time. No, it's whenever there is a need for it, then you take it. The third group of people is like da, is like the disease. It is not needed at all. It is never needed at all whatsoever. Yet the servant may be afflicted by it. Such people provide neither benefit nor agreeable company. Right? So there's no nafa from them, nor is there uns. There's a sense of intimacy or agreeable company. One must be with these people who are considered like as a da. One must simply be diplomatic with them until one is relieved of them. Nevertheless, observing such a person may bring great benefit if Allah gives you the ability to see it. You see in his vices and low states what you find repugnant, and you avoid so you avoid these states. So in other words, that's like if there's any benefit that you can derive from such individuals, is to see what that is doing to them in terms of their actions that is causing so much harm to them, and you find that as being repulsive and repugnant. So like, I don't want that. You're around somebody who they love the dunya, and they're just completely heedless, and they're, right? The only benefit that you can attain from such individuals is to say, this is not what I want. I can see the wretchedness of the state that they're in, and I don't want it. Right? And it becomes something that is repugnant to you. And that would be the only thing that a person could actually benefit, is, again, observing such a person may bring great benefit if Allah gives you the ability to see it. You have to see it from that perspective. Right? You see in his vices and low states what you find repugnant, so you avoid these states. Indeed, the felicitous one is he who takes a warning from others, and the believer is the mirror of his fellow believers. So that's a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. Al-mu'minu mir'atu akhihi al-mu'min. Right? That the believer is the fellow mirror of his believer. It was once said to Isa alayhi salatu wassalam, wa ala nabiyya afdal salatu wassalam, who refined your character? Right? Man addabak. Right? And so this was said to Isa alayhi salam. Who was the one who refined your character? And so he answered, ما أدبني أحد ولكن رأيت جهل الجاهل فتجنبته. Excuse me. He said that no one refined my character, but rather I saw the poor behavior of the ignorant one and I avoided it. Right? So he saw how ignorant people behave, and he's like, I don't want that, and that I want to avoid that, and that's how his character was refined. So he said, indeed, he, may Allah send blessings and peace on him and our Prophet, spoke the truth. Right? وَلَقَدْ صَدَقَ عَلَى نَبِيِّنَا وَعَلَيْهِ الصَّلَاةُ وَالسَّلَامُ. For if people were to avoid in themselves what they find reprehensible in others, their characters would be refined without any need of a guide. Right? So just avoiding what it is that you see in others that is repugnant is a way that a person then refines their own character. But you have to see it. You have to see it. You have to have that perspective. If you don't have that perspective, then all the things that were mentioned from before will apply in terms of you being affected and afflicted by that. And you'll be dragged in that direction without you even knowing it. So it's being in that state of consciousness and awareness. So that's the first duty, right? That all of that, because at the beginning of this section of al-ikhwa wal-asdiqa, he said that there are two things. فَعَلَيْكَ بِأَمْرَيْنِ, that there are two things that you should do in terms of those duties, right? فَعَلَيْكَ فِيهِمْ وَظِيفَتَانِ, that you have to have two duties towards them. The first, all of that, what we just mentioned. Now the second, وَالْوَظِيفَةُ الثَّانِيَةُ وَالْوَظِيفَةُ الثَّانِيَةُ is to respect and fulfill the rights of companionship. مُرَاعَاةُ حُقُوقِ الصُّحْبَةِ, right? مُرَاعَاةُ حُقُوقِ الصُّحْبَةِ. So having suhbah towards others, they have a right in that regard, and so then you need to respect and fulfill those rights of the companionship. What are those rights? Once you enter into a relationship and friendship is established between you and your companion, you are responsible for fulfilling the duties demanded by that bond and friendship. So there's a responsibility that comes with friendship, right? That there's haqq, there's adab. In terms of once you establish that relationship, then there are certain rights and duties that become incumbent upon you. And in fulfilling them, there are certain rules of conduct. So all those different hadiths of the Prophet ﷺ that talk about how believers should be with one another, how brothers should be with one another, right? Once you establish that relationship with somebody, then all those rights become incumbent upon you towards them, right? That you don't cause them harm, or that if they become sick, you go visit them, or that if they sneeze, then you, and they say Alhamdulillah, then you say Yarhamakallah. All these are rights that are owed upon my brother or sister, that because of that ukhuwah, because of that connection, or that the friendship that is established between us. So the Prophet ﷺ, he said, there's a hadith that is mentioned in the Musnad al-Firdaus of al-Iraqi, as well as in other sources. مثل الأخوين مثل اليدين تغسل إحداهما الأخرى. So the likeness of one brother to another is like the two hands. One washes the other, or purifies the other. And so the likeness of two brothers is that of two hands, one washes the other. And the Prophet ﷺ, this is another narration that Imam Suyuti mentioned, that one time the Prophet ﷺ, he went into a grove of trees, and he picked two miswak, two toothsticks. One was bent, the other was straight. And so then the Prophet ﷺ gave to the companion that he was with the straight one, and he kept the bent one for himself, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And so then the Sahabi, he said, Ya Rasulullah, you are more deserving of the straight stick than I, right? And so, أنت كنت أحق بالمستقيم مني. فقال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم ما من صاحب يصحب صاحبا ولو ساعة من نهار إلا وسئل عن صحبته هل أقام فيها حق الله تعالى أم أضاعه. It's very powerful. So the Prophet ﷺ, he said, no one spends time in the company of a friend, of another companion, even for a short time in the day, without being questioned about his companionship by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, regarding whether he fulfilled the haqq, or the right of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in that companionship, in that relationship, or neglected to do so, right? And so this is Imam al-Suyuti, that he mentions it in one of his rasail, in one of his epistles, and it's also mentioned in the tafsir of Imam al-Tabari, as is mentioned here, right? And then in another hadith, وقال صلى الله عليه وسلم ما اصطحب اثنان قط إلا وكان أحبهما إلى الله عز وجل أرفقهما بصاحبه. So here it brings back that sense of rifq. The Prophet ﷺ said, no two friends who share each other's company, except that the kinder, the one who is a rafiq, because the word in Arabic for a friend also is a rafiq, right? Rafiq, huwa rafiqi, he is somebody that is my friend. Rafiq comes from rifq, kind, being gentle, right? And so it said that no two friends share each other's company, except that the kinder and more caring of the two toward the other is more beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? So be that rafiq, al-rafiq al-rafiq, the kind companion, the one who is gentle with their other, right? And then we'll, the last thing that we'll go through today is the section on the فَآدَابُ الصُّحْبَةِ. Okay, what are the etiquettes of friendship? Once this moves. So. It'll come out. There it is. Bismillah. All right. So now, adab al-sahab. What are the etiquettes of the friendship? What are the adab of friendship? The etiquette of friendship are to give your friend preference in your wealth, or if you cannot do this, to give freely out of your surplus wealth when he is in need. Again, this is not to the point where it causes you harm, right? Where it's just like it causes you too much harm over yourself, right? There is a preference towards the other from yourself, but not to the point where it causes any sort of harm. So that this is what the scholars did commenting. They say بشرط أن لا يقطع الإيثار عليك طريقا, with the understanding, with the condition that it does not cut off ways for yourself, right? That it ends up causing you harm. ولا يفرق خاطرك بعد أن كان مجموعا, or nor does it cause you in terms of from a mental capacity that it divides you or causes you confusion, so to speak, right? Because then it starts, people then they'll end up starting getting doubts within themselves and causing confusion. And it's like, why am I supposed to be doing this? And this is causing me more harm than good, et cetera, et cetera. And then you start thinking bad thoughts, et cetera. So no, that's you have, there are certain limits in terms of, so that it does not end up causing more harm to yourself. To provide swift assistance when he is in need, in person, and without having having to request it. So this is actually also one of the meanings of ithar. Ithar has to do also with when you give to others without them having to ask you, right? When you do things for other people without them having to ask you. That's one of the aspects or elements in the Arabic language of the meaning behind ithar. Is that you provide assistance or help when they're in need, and without them having to request it, from you. Okay. Another is to keep his secrets, meaning that you don't expose them, that kitman as-sir, that not to expose their or divulge what they have kept as a secret, to conceal his faults, right? And then satr al-awra. So satr al-awra. It has, or ayub, satr ayub, it has to do with if they have any deficiencies or faults, then you don't expose them, right? So you keep their secrets, you don't expose their faults. Because there are many hadiths that talk about tatabbu' awrat akhik, where if you basically expose the faults of your brother, Allah will expose your own faults, even if you're in the depths of your own home, right? So don't seek out the faults of your fellow Muslim brother or sister in order to expose them, because if you do that, Allah will expose you, right? Whether it's in this world or in the hereafter, or both, God forbid. Not to pass on people's criticism of him that would upset him, right? Again, another haqq of the suhbah. Don't pass on people's criticisms of him that would upset him. And this can easily also fall into like if you go beyond certain limits in this respect, it can then become namima, which is tale-bearing, right? And that is something that is actually considered as a sin, and one of the enormities of the tongue, namima, right? That it is condemned in the Quran and many hadiths of the Prophet ﷺ. To pass on people's praise of him that would please him. All right, so now what is the meaning behind this? إِبْلَاغُ مَا يَسُرُّهُ مِنْ ثَنَاءِ النَّاسِ عَلَيْهِ. If people say good things about you, and you convey that to your friend, right? For a believer, that is something that would encourage them to remain on what it is that they're doing for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is not about instilling within a person a sense of ujub, or vanity, where they start then seeing themselves, okay? Now, if people aren't necessarily at that level or refined to the degree where you understand that praise towards them is something that is going to benefit them, right, as a means of encouragement, but it might then, if it causes them to think, oh, well, I'm such a wonderful person, and I lose sight of why I'm doing what I'm doing, then it becomes something that is harmful. And that's why the Prophet, in those contexts, he prohibited people from praising others excessively. Okay? He prohibited people from praising others where there's an excess in that, where it's okay to praise people, but don't go in excess so that it doesn't end up causing the person who's being praised harm by them thinking, oh, I'm such a wonderful person, right? And then they lose sight of Allah. They lose sight of why they're doing what they're doing, right? So it's about encouraging people to be good, and that's why. and you see it from your own perspective. If somebody comes to you with words of praise, right? I mean, there's dua, and that the Sahaba would say when they would hear praise, right? Allahumma la tu'akhidhni bima yaqulun waj'alni khayran mimma yadhunnun. So what Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu used to say, right? Is that, oh Allah, don't take me to account for what people are saying about me. They're saying all these good things, but in reality, I don't see myself as that. So don't take me to account for what they're saying of me, and make me better than what they think, right? In my reality. People are thinking that, oh, he's wonderful, he's this, or she's wonderful, she's that, right? And so it's a way of humbling oneself. Don't take me to account for what they're saying. It's not really true. I know myself, I take myself to account. They have a good opinion of me. Make me better than what their opinion of me is, in my reality to you, oh Allah, right? That, again, it's always about taking oneself to account before your Lord, rather than before people. Because I don't do what I do, or I shouldn't be doing what I'm doing for the sake of people, to earn their praise or to stave off their criticism. If I'm doing that, then I have issues within my sincerity. So ideally, when a person is thinking about these things within themselves, then, But as a friend towards another, right, I want to encourage you, and I mention good things about you to others, and they come and they relay that to you. Oh, he said such and such a thing about you, right? As a means of encouraging an individual, and they keep doing it. That's the point behind this. And that's the haqq of the friendship, that as a friend towards another. When that praise comes to you, you deal with it within yourself to ensure that, okay, I don't allow this to be a means for seeing myself above others, or gaining a sense of pride or ujub, or those diseases of the heart that can happen. So you have to be careful in terms of the perspective, right? To pay full attention when he speaks. Again, that's a haqq of the suhbah. That somebody speaks to me, I listen to them attentively, in that which is of benefit, right? Not to pick apart his words in argumentation. To call him by the names he most likes. So if a person likes to be called Abu Fulan or Fulana, call them by that name. That's something that they like, right? To praise him for what you know of his praiseworthy traits. Again, for purposes of encouragement. To thank him for the favors he does for you. Man la yashkurun nas la yashkurullah. Yeah, that whoever does not give thanks to people does not give thanks to Allah. Man lam yashkurun nas lam yashkurullah. So it's from that mabda, or from that basis. To defend him in his absence from all infringements upon his honor, as you would defend yourself. So if somebody comes and speaks bad about that, and you say, no, that's not who he is, I don't know her as this or as such and such, please refrain from saying that, right? Again, with adab, with akhlaq. You don't fire off at them in defense of somebody else's honor, and then you end up transgressing your limits, and then it causes more harm than good. No. To give him advice with gentleness and by subtle hints if he needs it, right? Beautiful pieces of advice that, with gentleness and whatnot, with subtle hints. In other words, not necessarily being confrontational, right? But sort of with subtle hints, what do you think about such and such a thing, or such and such an action? And that's how the Prophet ﷺ would correct the Sahaba often enough. He wouldn't single people out, but he would say, what do you think of a people who do such and such a thing, right? Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. To pardon his slips and errors and not to censor him, right? Give people benefit of the doubt. If they make a mistake, then okay, you overlook it, right? Pardon it, and not to censor him. To pray for him in the ritual prayer. Make dua for them. That's the haqq of your brother. and your sister. Make dua for them, right? During his life and after his death. So not only when they're alive, but after they die. Make dua for them. To remain loyal to his family and relatives after his death. Again, that's one of the haqq. These are all adab of suhbah. These are rights that are owed to them that are from the etiquettes of friendship. To choose to make things easy for him by not burdening him with any of your own needs, so as to keep his heart free from your concerns. You know, not to burden other people with your concerns, that then you know that if you talk about them to them about these things, that then they will become, you know, burdened, or that they will have all this concern for you. To express joy at all the happy occasions in his life and sadness at all the calamities that afflict him. To be in your innermost heart just as you appear outwardly, so that you're truly sincere in your love for him, in private and in public, right? Don't be two-faced, in other words, where in their presence you're heaping on all this praise and lavish them with all this love and everything like that, but in reality, deep down inside, it's like you have none of that, okay? You don't want to be two-faced. To be the one who initiates the greeting of peace when you meet him. And there's a blessing in that when you're the first one to give salam. So, you know, we know some of the Sahaba that they would wait for the other to give salam to them first in order so that they would give the other more reward. But here Imam al-Ghazali is saying, you know, be the one to initiate the greeting of peace when you meet him, because there's more reward in that. To make room for him to sit in a gathering. To come out of the house to welcome him, to see him off when he leaves, to keep quiet while he is talking until he finishes, and to refrain from interrupting him. So all these many different adab or etiquettes of friendship towards the other, right? And these are all based on the Sunnah and Quranic principles, you know, that if a person comes into a gathering and to make room for them, you know, when you do that, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will open up things for you and will make room for you, right? إِذَا تَفَسَّحْتُمْ فِي الْمَجَالِسِ فَافْسَحُوا يَفْسَحِ اللَّهُ لَكُمْ, as is mentioned in the Quran. That when you enter into a gathering and there's no room, make room for others, and Allah will make room for you. Right? And this also has a spiritual meaning to it. It's not literally just limited to the physical, but also from a spiritual. You know, and so greeting them with the best of greetings, standing up, and these types of things, these are all adab. So in short, you should treat your friend exactly as you would like to be treated. The golden rule. لا يؤمن أحدكم حتى يحب لأخيه ما يحب لنفسه. No one of you truly believes. Your faith is incomplete until you love for your brother what you love for yourself. That's the golden rule. And here it's stated explicitly. Right? Treat your friend as you would like to be treated, exactly as you would like to be treated. For truly the brotherhood of a person who does not love for his brother what he loves for himself is mere hypocrisy, and will have evil consequences for him, both in the dunya and in the akhirah, both in this world and in the hereafter. These are the courtesies due to people in general that you do not know, and to those that are close friends and those who are your brothers. So now he's covered the mujahid, those who are unknown, mujahideen, and then al-ikhwa wal-asdiqa, and now he goes into the last, which we'll do this next week, which is al-ma'arif, and that will be the third of the three categories, and then we'll conclude the book as well next week, inshallah, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. Any questions about that, or what we've covered today? Clear? سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر وصلى اللهم على سيدنا محمد في الأولين وصلى اللهم على سيدنا محمد في الآخرين وصلى اللهم على سيدنا محمد في الملأ الأعلى إلى يوم الدين وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين. بارك الله فيكم وجزاكم الله خيرا. السلام عليكم.